Welcome back, Pokemon trainers. My name is Gabby Snyder, and I'm joined here by Jamie Boyd for the last round of this top 16 from the Victory Road World Cup tournament, sponsored by Elgato, that we'll be featuring today. Jamie, we've had some incredible games so far. Has there been anything that's really stood out to you from what we've seen?
Yeah, we just saw a Fisher hit in that last game, and that's
Yeah.
something you don't see very often too much. It's not very shaky accuracy, but able to take care of a Zacian on turn one. Very effective there. And also the sticky web Arachnid is definitely a highlight for me as well. Being able to put a stop to that Calyrex Shadow Rider immediately just by reducing its speed on the switch in was really, really cool. And I'm sure we're going to get some one last really cool match between Italy and France here.
Definitely. If we could take a look at the teams. Team France coming hot off of eliminating Japan from the World Cup, facing off against Italy, who's currently 2-0 against them in matches. It looks like only Damani Palmer was able to take a win so far, as the other games have all been 2-0 from Italy. But this is still very early on in this week's matchup, and there's still a lot of Pokemon to be played.
I do have a little bit of an update. Unfortunately, Italy have managed to win this set already because William Basilini has won their game, and we saw yesterday Flavio Belpidio did win their game on stream as well. So Italy are actually 4-0 going into this. That means they have advanced into the top 8. So the outcome of the last few games won't matter too much, but we can still feature a great game between Leonardo and Antoine anyway.
Yeah, so thank you for the update, Jamie. I appreciate it. And let's go ahead and take a look at these teams. Antoine Desaegher is going to be running a Eternatus team very similar to what we've been seeing so the Incineroar, the Rillaboom, the Suicune, but also a Zapdos and a Mamoswine to provide support for it.
Yeah, we've seen the Suicune be paired up with the Eternatus in the last few games as well. But Zapdos and Mamoswine are definitely some interesting picks coming out here. Zapdos is going to pair well, very well into opposing Zacians, as we've seen before. Picked up very early on in the format that it would be a very good counter, especially to the combination of the Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Urshifu as well, because you can get those statics going on the Urshifu. And Mamoswine is going to be doing very well into opposing Zacians as well. If you carry that Focus Sash item, you're guaranteed to get off at least one attack, and then it does pair very well with its Ice typing into some of the opposing Pokemon, like the Incineroar and the Rillaboom. If you're going for the Intimidate Shuffle, that's not going to work on the Oblivious Mamoswine, and then you're able to hit both of them with super effective hits. So a little bit of more of a niche pick, and kind of an anti-meta pick in the Mamoswine, as we'll have to see if that's going to work out for Antoine here.
Yeah, and shout outs to the Baguette. I don't know if we'll ever get to feature another France player picture on this stream, but the Baguette gimmick was A plus, A plus. Would Baguette again? Italy. I hope that y'all take inspiration from the Baguette. Maybe show us some pasta next time around, because they're such a powerful team. It's always fun to see when people have fun with these tournaments. But Leonardo, no stranger to these more high stakes Pokemon games. Top 8 in Malmo back in 2020, got day 2 at the 2019 World Championships, and running a fairly powerful Xerneas team at first glance, with Incineroar, Entei, Rillaboom, Urshifu, Rapid Strike, and Amoonguss for support.
Yeah, much more classic Pokemon paired with the Xerneas here. Some very tried and true Pokemon coming out with the triple core of the Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Urshifu. Got the Amoonguss to keep the Xerneas a little bit more safe, and opting for Entei over Volcarona, which is something we've seen on previous versions of this Xerneas team as well. Entei does have that immediate pressure. If you give it the Choice Scarf, it can outspeed and do a huge amount of damage to opposing Zacians, and it is immune to the fake outs with that inner focus as well. It's definitely more of a Xerneas focused team. You've got the extra Pokemon around it to try and support and get it into that position where it can just sweep with that Geomancy.
So it should be a very fun matchup between both Leonardo and Antoine. So let's go ahead and get game 1 of this matchup started, as I think the curious thing that I want to see in this matchup that I haven't quite seen yet personally is going to be how the Eternatus and the Xerneas matchup, because on paper, Eternatus is that legendary Pokemon that feels like it was made to stop Xerneas, because it needs like 20 different checks at this point in time.
So it's an awkward matchup between the Eternatus and the Xerneas. Without the Geomancy, Eternatus will always win because it will outspeed, it will get the super effective hit with the Sludge Bomb. But if you've managed to support the Xerneas to be able to get the Geomancy up, then it's going to have that increased stages of special defense and able to survive the Sludge Bombs as well. And it hits neutrally into the Dragon Poison typing of the Eternatus. So it is definitely an awkward matchup between the Eternatus and the Xerneas. Whether you're going to be able to get that Sludge Bomb off before the Geomancy would go off, or whether you're going to be able to get that Geomancy and be able to support the Xerneas very well. We'll have to see how Antoine's going to be able to try and do that with the Eternatus. You've got the Amoonguss to Rage Powder away any potential attacks coming from the Xerneas. You've got the double Fake Out in the Incineroar and the Rillaboom. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Geomancy was able to be set up for the Xerneas on coming from Leonardo's side of the field. So it's going to be a little bit awkward for Antoine if this Geomancy is going to be set up, because the Eternatus is the best way of breaking through it. Maybe there's something like a Roar on the Suicune. Maybe it's just going to go for the Snarls instead to try and mitigate some of those Geomancy boosts. But if the Geomancy does go up for Leonardo, Antoine is going to have a very tough time.
Yeah, and especially going into a game one situation, Geomancy has to be on the top of your mind, because a lot of times when people play teams like Xerneas, they'll go for like the predictable strategy game one and then just do something completely different in game two in a best of three situation. And I don't think there's necessarily anything punishing Leonardo just going straight for that Xerneas and Amoonguss lead. You know the potential for Geomancy is there. On Antonier's side of the field, and the Eternatus.
Yeah, so going to be able to get the redirection going immediately with the Amoonguss, but maybe not this turn because you've got the Fake Out pressure with the Incineroar. You could just go for the Fake Out into the Amoonguss and the Sludge Bomb would land into that Xerneas before the Geomancy. So you've got to expect that some kind of Protect or switch about for the Xerneas will happen here to try and be able to get that Geomancy off, because you can't do it at least on this first turn. If you've got double Protect, that is an option to stall out the Fake Out, and then you'd be able to just go for the Rage Powder and the Geomancy on that next turn. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that, or maybe just a switch out into your own Fake Out and a Protect on the Xerneas to try and get the Fake Out pressure on top of the opponent the next turn. But at this point, can't really just safely go for the Rage Powder and the Geomancy on this turn. Maybe you could have done, though, because the Incineroar is switching out into the Rillaboom.
Antoine's, like you said, switching in the Rillaboom, bringing the grassy terrain along with it. Don't have to worry about being put to sleep when you're a grass-type Pokemon, which would help out a lot. It looks like Xerneas is starting the turn off with a Protect, as Amoonguss goes for a Protect as well, stalling out the Fake Out turn and showcasing what the Eternatus locked into for the turn. That is a Flamethrower.
Yeah, and a really, really nice play from Antoine here. Siphoning out the Fake Outs once again. Now the double Protect has been burned. You get to go for Fake Out into Amoonguss and Sludge Bomb once again into the Xerneas. And there's no double Protect that can come out to stop that at this point. So really, really nice turn one play from Antoine coming out to be able to burn the Protects. And now it's up to Leonardo to try and adjust here. Maybe they just opt for the switch out of the Xerneas instead because they're going to be threatened so much. But actually it's the Eternatus that's going to be switching out.
Incineroar taking the field in Eternatus' spot. The Xerneas looks like it'll be sticking around. Nope, just kidding. That Xerneas also switching out to another Incineroar. So Leonardo's Incineroar will certainly benefit in coming in second, as that Intimidate will lower the attack of both the Rillaboom and the Incineroar on Antoine's side of the field. The Rillaboom going for Fake Out into the Incineroar, and Amoonguss Spore into the Safety Goggles Incineroar.
Yeah, that was a very interesting turn. Both restricted switching out there. When Antoine had the opportunity to just go for Fake Out Sludge Bomb, that would have still done a very reasonable damage to the Incineroar on the switch in. But opting to switch out the Eternatus, trying to catch something else, as both Incineroars are switching in. Now there's Fake Out pressure on the field once again. But the Amoonguss is not in the position it wants to be in at all. It's facing down the opposing Rillaboom, which is going to be immune, and the Safety Goggles Incineroar, which is also immune to the Spore.
U-turn from that Rillaboom, going to switch it out immediately and force Antoine to send in a Pokemon in its place to really mitigate the threat of the Spore and the Incineroar. His choice is going to be Zapdos, as Parting Shot from the Incineroar allows Leonardo to switch and immediately adjust to the Zapdos reveal. I would assume that the the Xerneas will be coming back onto the field for Leonardo here, since barring the Incineroar, which we don't have much information on as to if it can stop or otherwise force this Xerneas off the field. This seems like the perfect opportunity for that Xerneas to get up the Geomancy. A Flare Blitz from Antoine's Incineroar will force Amoonguss to consume that Akka Berry. It's super effective, but it just doesn't deal any damage. And Amoonguss, free to finalize the turn, goes for a Spore into the Zapdos and is able to successfully put it to sleep.
Yeah, very strong Spore coming out from Leonardo, because that was a Rillaboom at the start of the turn, so being able to predict the U-turn, switching out into the Zapdos, would have caught either the Eternatus or the Zapdos on the switch-in, and getting them asleep means that this Geomancy is effectively going to be free at this point, barring a Roar on the Incineroar, because it does still have the safety goggles. You can't keep it safe with the Amoonguss, so even if it doesn't have the Roar, you can still get a passing shot off into the Xerneas, try and get that reduction in special attack going, so it would only be out +1 stages of special attack, but it would still be able to get the speed boost to put it faster than the Eternatus, and the special defense boost to be able to take on that Eternatus a lot better. And even a +1 Moonblast is going to hurt the Eternatus, even though it is such a bulky Pokemon at this point. And if you do try and go for the parting shot with the Incineroar as well, that's going to open up the potential of a Spore going into that Incineroar slot as well.
It's going to be a tough spot for Antoine, as Xerneas is able to successfully use Geomancy this turn. One interesting thing to note, as we do have the benefit of watching this game from Antoine's perspective, we can get a sneak peek at the moves on that Incineroar, and it knows 1 Fire-type attack, 2 Dark-type attacks, and a Normal-type attack. As we've already seen Fake Out revealed from that Incineroar, this is a good indication that it's probably not carrying Roar. And we'll have to see if Leonardo is able to catch on to that. As parting shot, the choice will lower Xerneas' boosted special attack by 1 stage and give Antoine the opportunity to rotate in the Zapdos very smartly, realizing the Zapdos is already asleep. And if there's one thing that Spore can't do, it's make you get double sleep. You can still take damage from a Pollen Puff, but that's not going to be very effective.
Yeah, going on the offensive with Pollen Puff isn't something you see too often. It is very much used for the healing into your own partner. But Xerneas at full HP means that you might as well get that tiny bit of chip, being able to get some damage onto the Zapdos, whereas the Spore wouldn't have done anything because it is already sleeping.
Yeah, and it looks like Zapdos, content to have taken the threat of the Spore away for a turn, leaves the field, the Incineroar taking its place. It's very interesting to see Antoine relying so much on these switches, given that this is his way to lower the Xerneas' special attack and make it more vulnerable to Pokemon like the Eternatus in the back of Antoine's party. Leonardo, keen to get in on the switches on own, will also send in that Incineroar, intimidating both of Antoine's Pokemon once again. Fake Out from the Rillaboom connecting with that Xerneas, and we're just going to see these trainers, I think, pivot around until the special attack boost on that Xerneas has been mitigated, which is a very Series 10 way to approach this matchup.
Yeah, and so another Series 10 thing is just getting your Fake Out pressure on the field once again, with both Incineroars landing on the field. Means we can get the Fake Outs coming out. We'll have to see who's going to be faster between both the Incineroars, because if Leonardo's is faster, you could go for the Fake Out into the opposing Incineroar. That would allow Xerneas to get off one of those boosted attacks. But if you're the slower Incineroar, that means that Antoine would be able to get the Fake Out into the opposing Xerneas. That wouldn't be too much damage coming out either. You have to decide if you're going to opt for the potential parting shot as well. But it looks like Leonardo was going for the fast Fake Out and managing to put a flinch onto that opposing Incineroar.
And some good information as this match progresses as to which Incineroar is going to be faster. Moonblast almost taking out the Incineroar on the side of the field. Rillaboom, though, getting the U-turn to connect and allowing Antoine to switch in the Eternatus. Most likely content that the Xerneas has been weakened enough, at least in its attacking power, that this Eternatus should be able to maintain the field pressure with the threat of Sludge Bomb.
Yeah, and it's still going to be able to take a lot of damage from the Xerneas, either from the Dazzling Gleam or the Moonblast at this point. Incineroar is absolutely going to be in Dazzling Gleam KO range. You're going to be able to survive a Sludge Bomb coming out from the Eternatus because of your special defense boost, and then you can reduce that even further with your own Incineroar. You get a very safe Dazzling Gleam and a parting shot into the opposing Eternatus here. Or maybe even just going for the Moonblast into the Eternatus if you're not too worried about the opposing Incineroar, and you just want to get the big damage down onto the Eternatus. We'll have to see if it's able to survive a +1 Dazzling Gleam in combination with the Moonblast, maybe even the +1 Dazzling Gleams, or 2 of them at least, so you can keep the spread pressure going. But really, you just get to click Dazzling Gleam at this point and switch out with a parting shot potentially, but no, it's just a straight up switch into the Amoonguss.
And Amoonguss, a great Pokemon to have on the field, as it'll mean it'll be that much harder for Eternatus to connect and attack with the Xerneas. For now, though, Eternatus going for a Protect as Moonblast from Xerneas actually calling the Incineroar not leaving the field with that Moonblast, or should I say calling the Protect and not locking into Dazzling Gleam. Most likely looking to connect that Moonblast with the Rillaboom that Antoine brought, as I think Antoine is down to his final 2 Pokemon in this matchup. Oh no, there's the Sleeping Zapdos, which is still going to be tough because that Zapdos is not guaranteed to wake up anytime soon.
It's effectively useless. You're effectively playing with 2 Pokemon at this point, especially because the Zapdos hasn't taken any turns of sleep either. And it's definitely calling the Protect on the Eternatus with the hard switch out of the Incineroar. If you went for parting the shot that turn, Incineroar stays on the field and doesn't get the damage reduction, doesn't get the pivoting action, but the straight up switch into the Amoonguss means that you're threatening the Rage Powder to keep the Xerneas safe. You're threatening the Spores into the opposing Eternatus as well. If you manage to get a sleep onto the Eternatus, you're pretty much going to steamroll the rest of this game with the Xerneas at this point.
Xerneas protecting this turn. Leonardo realizing just how important it is to this matchup, but Antoine making the correct prediction. Fake out plus Flamethrower into that Amoonguss. The Occaberry is gone, but it's not enough damage to pick up that KO. Though Amoonguss most likely within knockout range for something like a U-turn or Grassy Glide from the Rillaboom in this next turn.
Be really close with that grassy terrain recovery. Might be able to just put it out of range of the grassy glide, so may have to opt for the U-turn on the Amoonguss instead. A really nice target for Antoine to try and get back into this game, calling the Protect correctly, getting the big damage down onto the Amoonguss without having to take a sleep turn at this point. So now it's down to Leonardo whether they want to just go for the Rage Powder, try and keep that Xerneas safe from any Sludge Bombs coming out, or try and pivot out once again, get that Regenerator going, and switch in your Fake Out Pressure with this Incineroar.
Incineroar's Intimidate will also weaken the incoming Grassy Glide from that Rillaboom, but given as Xerneas was able to successfully protect in the previous turn, it will not be able to protect this time around. Grassy Glide does about 20-ish% damage as a Moonblast from that Xerneas connects with Eternatus. It is not enough to pick up the knockout, but it just got so close. Sludge Bomb connecting with Xerneas, but that's also not enough damage. But with the poison damage in between turns plus a decent attack, it can be knocked out at this point. The big question is, though, how does Antoine find the opportunity to go for that damage?
Yeah, it's a pretty crucial poison there. You're probably going to be able to survive the Grassy Glide without it, but now you might be in range at this point. At least you've got the Fake Out Pressure once again on the field with the Incineroar, but your Xerneas is on a timer at this point. It's going to be KO'd to the poison. You'll be able to get off at least one more attack, potentially, because you can just go for Fake Out into the Rillaboom and then just go for the Moonblast or the Dazzling Gleam at this point. If you do have Dazzling Gleam, that would be enough to pick up the Eternatus at this point and get some good damage on this Zapdos that is switching in for the Rillaboom.
And Zapdos may actually be able to use this turn to help it wake up a bit quicker, too. We'll have to see. Eternatus with the Protect, Fake Out from that Incineroar into the Zapdos. Going to take some nice recoil damage. Rocky Helmet, that's some really good information for Leonardo, as Moonblast will connect with the Zapdos and pick up the KO.
Ignoring the Eternatus once again, getting the correct prediction with that Xerneas, calling the Protect, getting the just straight up KO on that Zapdos. If the Eternatus would have gone for an attack that turn, it would have still KO'd itself to its own Life Orb recall at this point. But now, thanks to the Grassy Terrain recovery, it's able to go for an attack and survive one round of Life Orb. And you also get switching back into your Rillaboom. That's going to allow the Fake Out Pressure once again. And ignore the Fake Out Pressure that came out from the Incineroar for Leonardo. You could even just go for the Grassy Glide to KO the Eternatus at this point, and then you can get some good damage into the Incineroar with something like a Sludge Bomb or a Dynamax Cannon, but it's still pretty awkward. Because the Xerneas was able to get the KO on the Zapdos, the Eternatus is so low at this point, it's going to KO itself to 2 Life Orb recoils, so really you only get 2 more attacks with the Eternatus, and you've got 4 Pokemon still to break through. At least one of them is going to be very low and fating to poison, and in range of Grassy Glide. from the Rillaboom. So Eternatus can still get 2 more attacks into 3 of Leonardo's Pokemon that are left, and we'll have to choose quite smartly whether they're able to pick up the knockout, because Incineroar should be able to survive even a Dynamax cannon from the Eternatus, and it would be able to respond back with a KO of its own, even if it's just a Flare Blitz into the Eternatus. That would be enough after the Life Orb recoil.
Protect from Xerneas. Leonardo realizing that the Incineroar is the key to victory, but not for this turn, as Antoine will go it with the fake out. Dynamax cannon from the Eternatus will connect with the Incineroar, and this seems like the best case scenario for Antoine. He misses out on that KO on the Incineroar. He did get everything he wanted that turn, in the sense that neither of Leonardo's Pokemon were able to attack.
And both players calling the protects on the restricteds here. But unfortunately, that grassy terrain recovery is just not enough to allow that Eternatus to survive one more. It will take exactly 21 damage and will KO itself to 1 more Life Orb recoil. And that's even if it doesn't take a Dazzling Gleam on the way out as well. There is still the grassy terrain up, so the Rillaboom will be able to get a Grassy Glide and put a stop to that boosted attack coming out from the Xerneas at this point. But Eternatus is very low at this point. It would need to protect itself to get that 1 more turn of Grassy Terrain recovery so it can survive 1 more Life Orb hit. And if it goes to protect as well, Xerneas will faint at the end of this turn with the Poison or the Grassy Glide from the Rillaboom. And then you will have the opportunity to try and do something with your Eternatus. Yeah, we are going to be seeing the protect here.
Yeah, I think Antoine very smartly saving the Eternatus for later and ensuring that the Xerneas won't be around to turn a 1 attack into this Rillaboom into 2. But Leonardo, Incineroar targets into the protecting Eternatus, and as Rillaboom is able to proceed into the latter part of the game at full health. And given that grassy terrain has just ended, that's going to be so much more difficult for it, as it will no longer have that priority.
It's going to have it once again, though, because Rillaboom was waiting in the back for Leonardo, so that's going to set it up once again. Amazing timing to get it, the grassy terrain recovery. Once again, that's really going to help out the Eternatus, because you need to be careful of KOing yourself to your own Life Orb at this point. You've still got 1 more attack left in you because of that grassy terrain recovery, but then there is the potential to come out for the fake out on Leonardo's Rillaboom. That would do some good chip damage, may even put the Eternatus back down into KO itself range from Life Orb. But you do need to find a way through the Rillaboom at this point. Amoonguss should be able to do it, and it is going to be switching in for this Incineroar here. And with the Regenerator, it's still going to be put itself just over half health. So you just need to be able to find a way to break through this Eternatus, and then you'll just be able to slowly break through the Rillaboom.
Eternatus got the double protect and will not be taking any damage fake out from that Rillaboom. And Antoine correctly predicting the switch, going for a U-turn into the Amoonguss to deal that little bit of extra damage and to put it that much closer to being knocked out. If Antoine was looking for an opening in this match, I feel like this is the best he's going to get.
This is definitely an opening, and they played very well to be able to get into this position. Recognizing that the double protect would put them into this position as well. If you take that fake out chip, that's going to put your Eternatus in range of another Life Orb tick. But now you get that extra healing. You don't take that extra chip. And now you can fire off your attacks somewhat freely with the Eternatus. Rillaboom and Amoonguss aren't going to threaten it too much. You probably need to U-turn out with your Rillaboom into the Eternatus to get some damage off, but that's not going to be enough. The Grassy Terrain's Grassy Glide's not going to be enough. And maybe a Wood Hammer would be, in combination with the Life Orb recoil from the Eternatus as well. But Amoonguss is just going to be keeping that Rillaboom safe with that Rage Powder.
Only will be able to redirect this attack from the Eternatus. That's going to be Sludge Bomb is enough to pick up the knockout. So both these trainers now down to their final two Pokemon. Wood Hammer, though, into the Eternatus. It pick up that knockout, despite the fact that it's not going to be super effective. And Antoine's Rillaboom has the opportunity to get a head start in terms of damage against this Pokemon with that U-turn. But once the Incineroar takes the field, once the Incineroar has Fake Out and Flare Blitz, you know that that advantage is not going to last for long as we the final 3 minutes of this game 1.
Yeah, but we may not need that because the Incineroar is going to hit the field. You get the Intimidate as well as the Fake Out and Flare Blitz pressure, as the U-turns are going to do even less to the opposing Rillaboom. And then you should be able to just slowly chip away at the opposing Rillaboom. It doesn't often carry Protect at all. You get to go for Fake Out and U-turn on this turn, and it's guaranteed damage. And then the next turn you can just follow up with your own U-turns and Flare Blitz, and you should be able to out-damage the opposing Rillaboom.
U-turn brings the Rillaboom down to just below half of its health, and looks like Leonardo will be taking this game one, which brings up the interesting question of what Antoine can do better going into game two, seeing how close this was. At the end of the day, yes, Incineroar and Rillaboom are easily going to be able to take out Antoine's last Pokemon, but that game was really neck and neck up until the final few turns.
There was some amazing predictions coming out from both players, and it just ended up Leonardo just pulling ahead just a little bit. Yuta not even able to take out the Incineroar, so it is going to be able to end this game with the Flare Blitz to take out the Rillaboom. But yeah, the Xerneas was positioned well enough to be able to get that Geomancy up. And once it gets the Geomancy, it can take on the Eternatus so much better. You can see how you saw how much damage the Sludge Bomb did. It probably did like 60-70% to the Geomancy Xerneas with that Life Orb Sludge Bomb. So the Geomancy is very crucial in this game. If you get the Eternatus into a position where you can Sludge Bomb it before the Geomancy, it's just a clean knockout. But if you get the Geomancy up, then it's actually a game between the Eternatus and the Xerneas.
And the other interesting thing I kind of want to call out is that I don't think that Antoine had a solid strategy for stopping the Xerneas in the Pokemon that we saw him bring in that game. You know, if we go into game two and maybe Suicune has access to Roar, you know, we didn't see the Suicune at all in that game one. Maybe that's another adjustment you make as well, because that way you don't have to worry about the timing in terms of when the Eternatus hits the field and when it's going to be able to attack. You have that like little bit of insurance that, okay, even if I do switch things around, Suicune should be able to connect a Roar. But as we watch Antoine lock into his Pokemon for this game too, I don't think that adjustment is necessarily on the top of his mind.
It's most likely not going to be carrying Roar if you're not considering the Suicune coming into this match. It could be okay with just going for Snarls and mitigating some of the damage output of the Xerneas. But yeah, just still opting for at least 3 of the same Pokemon at this point, and effectively played with 3 Pokemon in that game. Once that Zapdos got spored on the switch in, it didn't do anything for the rest of the game. It didn't even try and burn any turns of sleep. It only switched out a couple of times and then got dropped to the plus 1 Moonblast. So yeah, you need to be able to make use of your Zapdos a bit more to be able to take care of the partners of the Xerneas, because it does well into the Amoonguss, the Incineroar, and the Rillaboom. So if it just stays awake and doesn't get spored, it can actually do something. It can get a Hurricane into the opposing Amoonguss and the Rillaboom. Can do some just good damage with the Thunderbolts as well. Even if it just takes some damage, it will be able to roost it off. It'll be able to get the Rocky Helmet chip damage on those fake out cyclings as well. So if that is what Antoine is going to opt for, then they need to keep the Zapdos being able to do some good damage, but it is actually going to be the lock-in and the Suicune instead. So maybe going for some of the Snarl spams as well. It may even have the Raw access on the Suicune, but it would probably be led if it did have access to the Raw. But going for the Snarls into the Xerneas should be good enough as well.
What a tough decision for Antoine. You could really see him like trying to figure out, do I bring the Zapdos? Do I bring the Suicune? He chose Suicune, and we'll have to see how that's going to play out as game 2 gets started with Xerneas and Amoonguss on the field, and Antoine again leading the Eternatus and the
So this is exactly the same as that game 1, and now we got the mind game of, do you switch out the Incineroar once again to try and cycle that fake out pressure? Because if the Incineroar does switch out to try and get the fake out fake out pressure back on the field with the Rillaboom, that is still an opportunity to just go for Rage Powder and Geomancy on that turn 1. It would be an incredibly brave play to go for in the fake out, in the potential of the fake out and the Sludge Bomb, but not going to be making that play at all. It's just going to be pivoting out into the own Incineroar, switching out that Amoonguss.
And bringing his own threat of fake out, bringing those intimidates. If there's one Pokemon that I think everybody knows what it does, Freeze 10 at this point, it is going to be that Incineroar. Xerneas, realizing how much danger it's in, knowing that it cannot safely go for the Geomancy, will go for Protect this turn and prevent it from taking any Sludge Bomb damage from the Eternatus.
Yeah, so Leonardo got the better end of that turn 1, being able to correctly predict that it was Fake Out and Sludge Bomb this turn. Now you've got the Fake Out pressure on your side of the field, you can just go for the Fake Out into the Eternatus, and you get your Geomancy at this point. You'll take a parting shot in return for getting that Geomancy up, but really you just need the special defense boost and the speed boost to be able to take on this Eternatus a lot better.
Fake out into the Eternatus, gets a critical hit, but more importantly, will keep it from moving this turn, opening up the opportunity for Geomancy to once again take the field. Just like you were saying, Jamie, this is the perfect opportunity for Xerneas to get those critical speed and special defense boosts, as it'll now be faster than the Eternatus, and will also have that critical 2-hit knockout from the Sludge Bomb rather than a single hit. Incineroar, though, right behind the Geomancy with parting shot to lower that special attack. And again, like you mentioned, this could be the opportunity to get that Suicune on the field and get those Snarls going.
Yeah, so this would be an opportunity for that because you want to reduce the Xerneas as quickly as you can. Instead, going to be the Rillaboom, so maybe going for the fake out pressure instead, because Incineroar has used its own fake out at this point. You can just go for a fake out into the opposing Xerneas and then get some very good damage into the opposing Incineroar with a Dynamax cannon at this point. But at the same time, you could be predicting that the Xerneas would still go on the offensive anyway, and you could go for a very brave fake out and Sludge Bomb into the Xerneas, and that would do some very good damage and put it into Grassy Glide range if you're able to connect with that. But then that would be a very, very risky play if the Xerneas was just going to go for the Protect. That would just allow the Incineroar to go for a parting shot, or even a Flare Blitz to get some good damage onto the Rillaboom and put it in Moonblast KO range. So it could be a big risk, but we'll have to see if that's going to be the play that's going for. But no, the Eternatus is just going to be switching straight out into that Incineroar.
And that Incineroar bringing with it another round of Fake Out and Intimidate. Given how critical the field positioning was in game 1 for this matchup, I think it's very wise that Antoine keeps that Eternatus safe until that special attack can be lowered even further, as Incineroar taking 90% of its health and damage from a Moonblast U-turn into the opposing Incineroar will give Antoine the ability to finally reveal that Suicune in the back of his party, and a final parting shot to end the turn from the opposing Incineroar will give Leonardo the opportunity to respond to it, possibly with the Amoonguss or possibly with whatever other Pokemon he brought to this matchup. And it could be that Rillaboom.
If it's still the Rillaboom, that's going to threaten down that Suicune very heavily, and it would be able to out-prioritize the fake out of the opposing Incineroar. So really strong play from Leonardo, going for the attack in the face of that fake out and Sludge Bomb, being able to call the correct play, switching out the Eternatus, most likely going to be U-turning into the Eternatus if that Xerneas does go for the Protect, because then you've still got the same position, but then you burn the Protect of the Xerneas, and you can now very safely go for the fake out and the Sludge Bomb. But going for the attack instead, you've got the Incineroar very low. The Rillaboom has come in, so it is going to be exerting that fake out pressure onto the Incineroar, or that big damage down onto the Suicune as well. If Suicune has Roar, it absolutely has to go for it this turn to try and get rid of that Xerneas. But if it doesn't, it's probably just going to have to be going for the Snarls instead to try and reduce that special attack down once again. It is only at +1 stages of increased attack because of that earlier parting shot. You can get it back down to neutral and you'll be able to take the attacks a lot better. But the damage has really already been done to that Incineroar. It's going to be in range of even a neutral Dazzling Gleam at this point. So it's not going to be able to do too much more pivoting as well, especially if the Rillaboom is able to go for that fake out to put a stop to it attacking this turn.
Yeah, and a lot of times when we see these matches that are so dependent on board positioning and switching, being able to get that first knockout is so critical. Moonblast from that Xerneas into the Suicune getting a special attack drop so that Snarl does even less damage than it was going to do the first time around. But more importantly, does get that special attack drop onto the Xerneas, bringing it back down to neutral.
It doesn't really need the special attack at this point. Any attack is going to KO the Incineroar, and you've got the Rillaboom on the field facing down the Suicune that has been heavily damaged as well. It's getting some reasonable recovery with the leftovers in combination with the grassy terrain, but still probably going to be in range of an attack from the Rillaboom, especially if you're pairing it with the extra chip damage that would come out from the Dazzling Gleam as well. So still a pretty awkward position for Antoine. Even though you've managed to reduce that special attack of the Xerneas straight back down as well, it's still got the speed, it's still going to outspeed the Eternatus, and you're not even going to be able to get a Tailwind up with the Suicune because it is going to be switching out here.
A risky switch. Eternatus would be able to take a Grassy Glide quite easily, but would be taking some big damage from whatever Xerneas attacks with this turn. Antoine also switching out the Rillaboom, so huge, losing all momentum. And Moonblast does connect with the Rillaboom, though. Will bring it down to about 50% of its health. And Rillaboom on the opposing side of the field would hammer. which would have definitely been able to knock out that Suicune. So again, Antoine just losing all of his momentum in that previous turn, going for the double switch and looking to capitalize on it now. Fake Out and Sludge Bomb would be a great place to start.
You really got to start dealing with this early. It's sitting at full HP, and it's still got its speed and special defense boost, so it's going to be able to take on the Eternatus still pretty reasonably. And you've got the potential of just pivoting out Leonardo's Rillaboom once again, get the fake out pressure of the Incineroar, or get the Amoonguss on the field as well to get those Rage Powders and Spores going as well. Antoine needs to find a way to break through this Xerneas. It's got to be most likely the Rillaboom in combination with the Eternatus. If you get the Sludge Bomb off, it might be in range of Grassy Glide. And it is going to be Amoonguss switching in, so it's not going to be intimidating the Rillaboom either. So if you're able to get that Sludge Bomb into the Xerneas, that might put it in range of the Grassy Glide, but it's not going to be this turn because it is going for the Protect.
Yeah, Leonardo realizing that Xerneas is left out in the open also catches the Eternatus' Protect by surprise. Rillaboom free to U-turn into the Amoonguss and give Antoine the opportunity to adjust once again to the presence of that Amoonguss on Leonardo's side of the field. And this is really a great opportunity for the Incineroar making another appearance because it will have access to Fake Out, and that Fake Out will be enough to shut down the Rage Powder or a possible Spore from the Amoonguss. And this is the opening that the Eternatus has been waiting for. It just is unfortunate that it's most likely going to be the knockout of the Incineroar that Antoine has to pay for it.
But you still need to be getting damage down onto this Xerneas. And we saw the Sludge Bomb, even after the Geomancy boost, was still doing very respectable damage. The Grassy Terrain's disappeared as well, so when the Rillaboom hits the field, you'll have access to the priority Grassy Glide once again. And now that the Xerneas has gone for the Protect, this is a prime opportunity to get that Fake Out into the Amoonguss, put a stop to those potential Rage Powders, and put a stop to the potential Spores that come out as well. And you need to get that damage down onto the Xerneas at this point with the Sludge Bomb from the Eternatus. If you manage to get a Poison once again onto the Xerneas, that'll put it on a timer, and then you'll be able to just cycle your Fake Outs, pivot it around, and then its Xerneas will eventually be KO'd. But you really need to start getting damage down onto this Xerneas very quickly.
And if Xerneas is left to remain on the field, it will just start doing chip damage consistently with Dazzling Gleam or Blast. And, Leonardo's also been fairly lucky when it comes to those special attack drops as well. And that has to be something that Antoine is worried about. But Fake Out into the Amoonguss, no attack because the Suicune switches in for the Eternatus and will survive the attack, will get some health back with leftovers, but again, there is hardly any health on the field for Antoine right now.
That was definitely a missed opportunity to get that Sludge Bomb. The Xerneas is at neutral stages of special attack. You're going to be able to take that Moonblast really comfortably. Maybe you're worried about a special attack drop potentially, and that would reduce the damage output and probably make the Sludge Bomb a 3-hit KO at that point. But you really need to get damage onto this Xerneas. It's still at full HP. It's still got the boost to its speed and special defense. You still need to find a way to break through it. You can get some Snarls off with the Suicune, but not when you switch it in on the Moonblast. Now it's going to be in range of another one.
And that Rillaboom also possibly in range of a Moonblast plus a Pollen Puff combination from this opposing Amoonguss. Moonblast will be the first move, so Amoonguss will be attacking this turn, brings the Rillaboom down into the red. Suicune will take the opportunity to set up Tailwind, so the Eternatus is finally going to be faster than the Xerneas for the next couple of turns. Spore will put Suicune asleep for its trouble.
Yeah, now you've got the Eternatus faster, but you need to get the Eternatus onto the field at this point. And that means you're going to have to switch around once again, get some more pivoting going, and that opens opportunities even further to be hit by the Moonblast from the Xerneas, and opens opportunities for the Amoonguss to get a Spore. If you try and switch out in the Eternatus in the middle of a turn without one of your Pokemon being KO'd, that is a potential to be spored, whether that's the U-turn from the Rillaboom, or if you're just hard switching the Suicune. At this point, if the Amoonguss gets the Eternatus switching incorrect and puts it to sleep, that's probably going to be a killer blow at that point, because you need to be making use of this Tailwind to be able to get that Eternatus, to be able to get the Sludge Bombs into the opposing Xerneas. And even with the Amoonguss on the field, even if it doesn't get the Spores, you can just go for a Rage Powder to keep it safe from the Eternatus Sludge Bombs. And it looks like the Rillaboom is switching out, but it is going to be the Incineroar instead.
And Incineroar also within range of knockout. Antoine at least guaranteeing himself access to fake out next turn, regardless if it's from the Incineroar or the Rillaboom. Moonblast from Xerneas will be enough to
Ooh.
miss the KO on Suicune by 1 HP. Spore will not connect with Suicune as it's already asleep.
Yeah, unfortunate dodge the KO there. That would have been the opportunity for Eternatus to be able to switch in at that point. Maybe you
Yeah.
preferred the Suicune to be KO'd. It's pretty much a useless slot while it's asleep on the field. So actually, the KO there would have probably been beneficial to Antoine, effectively stalling out their own Tailwind at this point, and still haven't got Eternatus to be able to hit the field. You can go for a Flarebits into the Amoonguss, get some good damage. You can get a Fake Out into the Xerneas and try and switch in your Eternatus at this point, or just try and get your Suicune KO'd, or even the Incineroar because it's so low at this point as well. Really, you probably need to be losing a Pokemon this turn so you can try and get the Eternatus in, but you also really need to get it in next to the opposing your Fake Out as well, because you need to put a stop to the Amoonguss Rage Powder.
Suicune unable to wake up this turn, and Incineroar using Flare Blitz to attack this Amoonguss for some big damage, but not enough to pick up that KO. Does get the burn, which will certainly help offset all this grassy terrain recovery, but we're in another round where Suicune still asleep, does not need to go back to sleep. Incineroar still within knockout range. That Amoonguss still on the field. Xerneas still on the field. It seems like Antoine's fighting so hard to change this board state, but is just unable to find that opportunity.
Yeah, at least the burn will help a little bit. That's going to cancel the grassy terrain recovery. And now you've used up the Ockerberry. If you're somehow able to get another Flare Blitz into the Amoonguss or the Flamethrower from the Eternatus, that should be a KO at this point. Really, you need to get rid of that Amoonguss so you can get the Sludge Bombs off into the into the Xerneas at this point with your own Eternatus. Because while the Amoonguss is still on the field there, you can always just click Rage Powder when the Eternatus is on the field. And when it's not, the Xerneas is just completely free to just keep firing off these Moonblasts.
And it will get the knockout on Suicune this turn. So Antoine will lose access to Tailwind and will not get to have the Eternatus on the field with that help. But thanks to a little help from a move called Parting Shot, will have the opportunity to send in the Eternatus and the Rillaboom. My only concern here is that the Amoonguss is probably going to go for a Spore again. And, if it wasn't that Rillaboom, that could have been absolutely a game loss for Antoine with that Eternatus. But very smart switching there.
It was definitely the potential for a Pollen Puff into that Rillaboom, and that would have probably been able to pick up the knockout. But you've got to cover for the Eternatus potentially switching in. Pollen Puff would have been near useless against that, and Spore would have put a stop to it completely. The Eternatus is now next to Fake Out, which is what you need, because you need to go for the Fake Out into the opposing Amoonguss and the Sludge Bomb into the Xerneas, but the damage is really racking up on Antoine's side of the field. They've lost their Suicune at this point. Rillaboom and Incineroar are so low, they're going to be in range of any Moonblast that the Xerneas would want to go for at this point. Even after another parting shot onto the Xerneas to try and reduce it even further, should still be in range of the Moonblast at this point. And there's been a lot of time used up in this game as well. We're probably getting somewhat close to a timer win as well. And there's still 4 Pokemon on Leonardo's side of the field, and Antoine's got 3, but 2 of them are very low, and one of them's just about to be KO'd to this Moonblast.
No Rage Powder, no Fake Out. Instead, just a Moonblast to take out the Rillaboom. Sludge Bomb does secure the knockout on Amoonguss, though, so this Eternatus does not have to worry about going to sleep for the remainder of this match.
And now you've got Fake Out pressure coming back in on the field for both players. You've lost the Rillabooms, and now you're down to the last Pokemon with the Incineroar. It's going to be able to come in and get a Fake Out off, but maybe not in the face of the opposing Pokemon that Leonardo could be bringing in. Whether that's going to be the Rillaboom, and I'm pretty sure we saw that the Incineroar on Leonardo's side of the field was able to Fake Out first, so potentially going to be able to go for that again if they bring in the Incineroar. Incineroar is going to be joining the field for Antoine's and Leonardo's side of the field here. We'll have to see if that is going to be a faster Incineroar on Leonardo's side of the field. Really, you've got to hope at this point it was a speed tie between them, and then you win your own Fake Out war against. You can go for the Fake Out into the Xerneas, and then hopefully the Incineroar went for the Fake Out into your own one at that point. But otherwise, you're just going to be trading Fake Outs, and that doesn't really achieve too much for the Eternatus, because then the Xerneas will next turn just be able to go for Moonblast into the opposing Incineroar, and that will be able to pick up a knockout at that point. Then you can just go for the parting shots, reduce the damage output of the Eternatus, so it won't be able to get the 2-hit knockout with the Sludge Bombs. Maybe you would have to rely on the Sludge Bomb poisons at that point, and then just stall out with some protects to try and stall it out, because Eternus could potentially beat the Incineroar and the Rillaboom as well, especially because there's no grassy terrain on the field either. But it looks like we are just going to be trading fake outs here.
Actually, no fake out from Antoine, but that also means no attack either, unfortunately. It looked like Antoine did choose to lock into some dark type attack that turn from the Incineroar, and I don't think we've necessarily seen that move revealed, so could have been an interesting tech, but unfortunately, Leonardo just predicting that, getting the flinch on the Eternatus, and winning him this game against France 2-0. And we finally get the reveal of the last move on the Xerneas. It didn't have Dazzling Gleam at all. It's substitute.
Yeah, it makes sense. It wasn't going for Dazzling Gleam on opportunities it could have been. It was just going for Moonblast the entire game. Quite surprised we didn't see a substitute a little bit earlier. There were probably opportunities to go for that, but this is just guaranteeing the win at this point. Dynamax Cannon not able to pick up the knockout on the Incineroar. That means a passing shot's going off into the Eternatus. That means you're going to get fake out pressure once again, and you can't even break the substitute anymore before you take another few Moonblasts on the Eternatus. So it's maybe a little bit of a slower end game. It's going to take a couple of turns to get through the Eternatus, but we've only got 3 minutes left in this game regardless. So Xerneas, Rillaboom, and Incineroar will be able to take this game against the Eternatus. Whether that's Leonardo just going for the fake outs and the Moonblast to try and pick up the knockouts, or just taking it nice and slow, you have the opportunity now to just go for fake out and substitute and protect and switch out and fake out. That could also be a win condition at this point as well. So multiple ways for Leonardo to be able to take this match.
It was very interesting to watch this matchup play out because that Amoonguss caused so much trouble for Antoine. You would assume that with a Pokemon like Incineroar and Eternatus on your team that you would be able to knock it out, but that Akaberry has really forced some 2-hit knockouts into 3-hit knockouts, and that is all the time Amoonguss needs to go for those spores and otherwise disrupt your opponent's strategy.
And with it able to survive, you just get the spores off you. I don't think it even spored in this game. It would have spored into just the Rillabooms and the Incineroars, but still having the threat of the Rage Powder was all that was needed at this point. Going to be opting for the Protect on the Eternatus, not going to be taking the Moonblast or the Fake Out, but that just stalls out extra time in this game. We're below 2 minutes at this point. We're going to get all the animations of the Grassy Terrain recovery for the Eternatus, for the Xerneas. I wouldn't be surprised if we just see the U-turn on the Rillaboom once again. Then you can waste some more time selecting the Incineroar to switch in, then you get the Fake Out again, and that'll probably be the end of the game at that point. So there's not really any way that the Eternatus can break through Leonardo's team. If you go for the Sludge Bomb into the substitute, that will break it at least, but then you've still got to follow it with another Sludge Bomb that may not even KO the Xerneas at this point, especially with all the recovery. And you could try and pick up the knockout on the Rillaboom or the Incineroar, but then you've still not got enough time to be able to break through Leonardo's team.
No, very well played by Antoine. I really like this variant of the Eternatus team just because it has so much bulk present. It's just unfortunate that Leonardo was able to match that bulk and then some. As a Grassy Glide, that looks like about a 20-hit knockout from this point. Moonblast, as we see, there are 57 game. Will bring Eternatus down into the red, also, or yellow, also getting that special attack drop. This Sludge Bomb will need a critical hit to keep Antoine sort of in the game, but does not find it as the seconds are just counting down.
Yeah, it's just a formality at this point, so you could just not click any moves and you win at this point, or you can just get the knockout with the Moonblast, and it's going to be in range at this point, especially with the combination of the Grassy Glide as well. So that is going to be it for Antoine here, and Italy really securing their place in the top 8 at this point, so will be advancing into the top 8. So very, very well done to Italy, really well played coming out from them, and a really good game to finish off today's stream.
Yeah, I feel like France has given us some of the most hype matches from the World Cup so far. So I am sad to see them eliminated in the round of top 16. But I'm sure that they and their baguettes will be back next year to make a go for the crown because they really had a tough run of it. I mean, being in the same group as Italy and Japan and being able to hold their own against the two, it really just shows how strong those trainers are in that region. But Italy, I feel like the Italians are just completely unstoppable when it comes to Pokemon. And it makes me wonder, they won this week so commandingly, at least from the games that we've seen so far. It makes me wonder if they have that momentum needed to get them through the round of 8 and the round of 4 all the way into the finals.
Yeah, we will have to see next week. We've got at least confirmation of two teams that will be advancing. We know that South Korea are making it to the top eight, and we know that now Italy are making it into the top eight as well. So we'll have to see what's going to be happening tomorrow to find out the rest of the teams that are going to be joining the top eight. So that is going to be it for us on the VGC side, at least for the World Cup. But we are going to be bringing you some Unite action very shortly on this Victory Road Twitch stream. It's going to be a little bit after this stream, so make sure you are staying tuned with this stream to come back for some brilliant Unite action. But that's going to be it for the VG side, and we will see you again tomorrow.